they can do that. All right, so it should be recording now. Also, there are a bunch of AI recordings going in. Okay, so great. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to come off of mute. I tend to get really excited in these trainings and talk a lot, so please stop me. I might not be able to see the chat, so again, come off of mute if you have a question. And then, yeah, this won't take 2 hours, I don't think. But again, I'll tap into people as needed for questions. There'll be some reflection, but this is mostly going to be about how to. It's going to give you the basics of instruction, and it's going to give you how to give assessments. And then those other trainings, like I said, will go deep dive into the different levels of SIPPS, and you'll learn how to do those or get a refresher if you've already been doing this for years. All right, I'm going to share my screen, get you guys started. Share full screen. We're going to screen 2. And we'll actually look at a couple assessments for those of you who've never done them before. That way you'll see what they look like and what exactly the process is. All right, so let's get into it. We've hit our 5-minute mark already. Ooh, calm down. Hold on. All right, here are our objectives for today. We're going to understand the purpose and structure of SIPPS. Again, you'll get more deep dive of that when you go through your other trainings for the different levels. And then also a good thing to do would be to review your materials. You always want to make sure you review it yourself, not just looking at videos and everything. Go through everything, check your manual, look at your appendix. The appendix is super important. And just very thoroughly go through your materials, especially if you've never used it. That way you'll know exactly what you have access to. And then on top of that, you should still have portal access for all of you returning coordinators. And then for new coordinators, I'll get you access to the portal as well. The learning portal is provided to us by Collaborative Classroom. They are the creators of SIPPS. They will be they provide us with that portal and it gives us access not only to the materials, but access to training, access to support, their blogs, their apps that you can use, all kinds of good, cool, crazy stuff that you can use. And I'll walk you through some of that probably at the end of this training. That way you can see a bit of it. But you have access to all of that digitally, and there are printable materials as well that you can use with the curriculum. So if there's anything that you don't have physically at your sites, a lot of those things can be printed if they can't be purchased. All right. In this training, we'll also know how to implement daily lessons effectively. Again, more of that information will be dived into as we go through the SIPPS lessons, but you'll get a basic skeleton or breakdown of how you would do a daily lesson. And then you'll be able to administer and score SIPPS placements in mastery assessments, and then you'll use the assessment data to group students and guide your instructions. Okay, so what is SIPPS? If you haven't heard the big breakdown of what SIPPS stands for, it is Systematic Instructions in Phonics, Phonological Awareness, and Sight Words. I think I said those backwards, but that's what the letters stand for. It is a research-based foundational reading program. It does change. We just recently, they just recently released edition 5. You should have access to, some of you at your sites, edition 3. Some of you are receiving edition 4, but you all have access to edition 4 and 5, I believe should be coming up pretty soon in the portal as well. It supports K through 12. So this curriculum can be used outside of 4th grade, K through 4th grade if you would like to. Those are not supported under the grant. However, you can take like a couple older kids if you would like to. I know St. Pete, they do all the way up to middle school. At one point, they did all the way through high school, but I think that program ended up going somewhere else or whatever. But it literally supports K through 12th graders and intervention in literacy. But anyone who needs decoding support can be using the SIPPS curriculum. It is tiered instructions, and those tiers are tier 1 core, tier 2 intervention, and then tier 3 in intensive. And then we'll go through these different levels. That way you'll be able to understand exactly what those things provide. So this is the phonics conundrum that is included with SIPPS. It basically breaks down the different levels and what they provide. So for our beginning and plus kiddos, and plus is 4th grade through 12th grade. Let me know if I can get this sent to you if it's too small, or if you need me to zoom in, let me know. But beginning is your basic information and foundational skills. You're hitting short vowels, single consonants, you're identifying sounds, you're looking at consonant blends and digraphs and CVC. You're going to get a lot of that in beginning. And plus, again, plus is that 4th grade through 12th grade part of the curriculum. And it's a little bit more advanced to fit the content that older kids would see, but it does cover those foundational skills for the older kids. The extension and plus section, that is your inflectional endings, your consonant trigraphs, long vowels, final E, all those a little bit more advanced sounds and words and high frequency words. You're going to see an extension and plus. Those are plus again is included for your 4th through 12th graders. And that, again, is going to be that more complex information using those skills for those older kids. Challenge, that's something that everybody hits. It's K through 12th, really. But to be honest, if you have a kindergartner that's in challenge, they shouldn't be in your program. But we'll go more information about what that looks like and what each section supports when we hit those individually. But challenge is going to be your syllables, meaningful morphemes, academic vocabulary. You're looking at suffixes and prefixes, schwas. You're going to get into a lot more information on how to manipulate words and build them through challenge. Also included in SIPPS, there's the letter names curriculum that I was mentioning earlier. That's going to be for your pre-SIPPS kiddos. And that component will hit the early phonological awareness concepts and print concepts. So we'll go over that in that beginning training. So you'll get more information about that. Pre-SIPPS is the curriculum that you give to the students that do not place into SIPPS. So if they're too low, I think you need about 20 letters to enter into the curriculum. So if they don't know their 20 letters, then they would go into that pre-SIPPS curriculum. And it's generally K through 1st that you get there, but rare occasions you might get an older kid, especially if there's some type of developmental disorder or I don't know, there are many different reasons. Generally, your kids that are on an IEP, you might get those kids that are sometimes in pre-SIPPS, but it just depends on the student. But you'll know that based on the testing that you give them. All right, some of the key components of a SIPPS lesson. First of all, keep in mind that the SIPPS lessons are scripted and designed to support both you and the students. So always have your manual with you. Always follow that manual. It's going to give you all the information you need to help the students, and it's built to create consistency, provide support and reduce frustration, and then build that confidence that you're going to need for your students to get through these lessons. But included in these lessons, you're going to hit phonological awareness. That's your sound manipulation. That's usually beginning and kindergarten students, which is your pre-SIPPS area. Decoding and spelling, sight words. You're going to hit a little bit of reading as well. And then fluency practice. Do not skip the fluency practice. That's usually the last part of the lesson. And it gets skipped because of time, but make sure they're getting that opportunity to practice reading on their own, and make sure you are monitoring those. Again, we'll go more into these different sections once we get specific in the levels. Lesson structure. This is an example for beginning. It may look a little different based on which level you hit. But generally there's some type of sounding out words or decoding. There's spelling dictation, I believe, in every level. Sight word practice or sight syllable practice, depending on what level you're at. Guided reading, and that goes all the way up to extension. And then I think around like lesson 26 of extension, and then all the way through challenge. Then they're doing like trade books and independent reading activities versus using the provided books in the curriculum. And then again, that fluency practice. Lessons take about 20 to 30 minutes, and they're designed for daily delivery, but we know that we only see our kids once, maybe twice a week. So we adjust a little bit. We've sat down with Collaborative Classroom and have gotten tons of training on how to implement this program into after school programs where we don't see them daily. And they've been instrumental, and they've learned a lot from us as well, because we are an anomaly to people who usually use this, which is in a full classroom setting. And you'll notice that with some of the videos that you might see for training, especially on the portal, you'll see that a lot of those are like either full classrooms or it'll be small group. So your materials needed. First off, there's digital content available, which I mentioned earlier on the learning portal. And then you're going to always have your manual in tow. So that's your teacher's manual. You can access that digitally, or you can have the physical big giant binder. There's also the option to break that binder down into smaller portions, make copies of it. We do have the good faith printing rule when it comes to educational materials. So if you need to make copies of any of that information to duplicate it for your mentors and your staff, that is an option. A few of us have already taken the steps to break down the manual into either mastery levels or into sections, to that way everybody's not carrying around a giant binder every time they do a lesson. Also included are your student books. So that's your little blue books and your purple books for beginning and extension. And I believe Plus has Dreams on Wheels, which is similar to the purple books and extension. Decodable readers, that's the blue books. Sound and sight word cards, which again, if you don't have those, there's printable version of those on the portal, or you're going to use the digital app. You're gonna need a whiteboard, dry erase markers, a tablet, notebooks or paper for students to write on. And then also materials that are needed are your placement tests and mastery tests, and that's prior to placement test is prior to you administering the curriculum, and then the mastery test is throughout the curriculum. Grouping students for SIPPS. So students are grouped by skill level, not grade. Keep that in mind. This way we're meeting them where they are. We're limiting frustration, and we're building confidence. You may find, and as we get further into the curriculum, you may find that you test the students and it doesn't work out initially. You're able to retest a student or to reevaluate a student as needed. That way, if for some reason they are not where they need to be, you can meet them there. Using the placement assessment to determine the right level. So you're going to be placed into, your students are going to be placed either into pre-SIPPS, beginning, extension, plus for the 4th through 12th graders, or challenge. As we go through the levels, you'll learn more about what grade level fits. But generally, as I said before, pre-SIPPS, that's K through 1st normally. Beginning is K through second if they're like really in intervention mode. Extension is second through third, and challenge is second through fourth grade, I believe. Again, you'll get more information about those levels and what they support when we hit each individual level. And then grouping your students, you're going to group them in small groups. They're going to receive differentiated lessons based on their level. Generally, the ratio is about 1 to 3 to 4 students. You don't really want to go more than that. At least not for your mentors. If there's a volunteer, generally when we introduce them to the program, they're told about 1 to 4 students. So try to keep their groups pretty low, but also balance it out. The more staff you have, the more staff availability you have, the better. Staff and mentors, so like volunteers. So try to balance that out with recruiting and whatever your staff model is for your Y. And then one-on-one is a possibility. Again, that's based on your staff availability. So if you do have the opportunity to provide that to students who need it, feel free. There's nothing against that. But you do want to prevent having really large groups if possible. People who have been here long enough have run into the situation where people are out or you have low staff and you're stuck with a group of like 7 kids that are all on the same level. It happens, but again, try to keep the numbers low.
Ryan, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut
No,
you
you're
off.
fine. You're fine.
I know you mentioned that the challenge was typically for second through fourth grade students. If a second grader is in challenge at the beginning of the school year, wouldn't that suggest that they really don't need the
I
program?
was just about to say they might not need the program if they're starting there.
Okay.
Definitely review the information you have. They might get referred to you, not based on anything that has to do with phonics. It might be comprehension of vocabulary. And a lot of our older kids end up with us because of that. They need that comprehension of vocabulary. And you'll notice that in the data that you collect through YReads and through SIPPS. Which students need to be there and which ones don't. It's generally at the discretion of the coordinator to determine if a student needs to be there. I know this year that we've heard that some of the principals and teachers might want to intervene on that. And I just want to give a little nugget. You have autonomy on who's in your program. We do want to make sure we are providing support to who the school is requesting. But as I mentioned, and I think the last meeting or the one before that, let them know that attendance in the program is important. And once you enroll a student, they are expected to follow through the whole program. But if they're unenrolling students, try to do it around vacation time. So like around December. That way they have enough time, the new students have enough time to gain data. Cool. Anybody have another question? Everybody good? Did I answer your question, Erica?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so the groups may change frequently based on staffing, behavior, skill, and mastery. And you'll notice that, again, there may be times where you have to retest a student or move them up or down based on something's too hard, something's too easy, or even you don't have enough people. So I'll ask some questions to everybody later regarding placement of students that are in similar groups or really close groups and how to navigate that later on in the training. So our SIPPS placement assessments, again, there are 2 that you are going to have available because of the grade type. So for your K through 3rd graders, you're going to use the first one, and that'll place them in either beginning, extension, or challenge. And then for the second assessment, that's your 4th through 12th grade assessment, and they'll either be placed in plus or in challenge. Now, there are some areas or some programs that use SIPPS and their older kids are just really, really, really low. If you find that is the case and plus it's too hard for them, go ahead and test them in the K through third curriculum. But definitely try them in plus first. But if that information is still way too hard for them, you're absolutely able to use the K through third curriculum. But pay attention to which grade level you are testing. For one, you don't want to double test the student on something they don't need to be tested on, or give them something that's going to be extremely too hard. But make sure you're testing the right grade initially. Administering the SIPPS placement test. So the purpose of that is to determine the appropriate entry level. Each level of the curriculum has multiple entry levels based on skill and based on the sections that they have. So like for beginning, for example, one of their entry levels is beginning 1, and you would cover that through 10 before you mastery tested them. And so everybody will get access to a mastery test schedule. It's the same one that we used last year. So you'll be able to see, and I can even pull it up during this training so you guys can see it. And I'll do that after we look at the actual placement and mastery tests. I'll show you what the mastery test schedule looks like. There is a copy of that in every manual. You can also find that information in the portal, but keep an eye on that. Make sure you're testing students where they need to be tested versus giving them blank tests. They get enough tests throughout the school year. They don't need extra ones or any of them that's going to waste any time for them. But the steps for that, first, you're going to make sure you're giving them individually. You don't want to do group testing at the same time. That kind of defeats the purpose of determining what each student's level is if they're all doing the tests at the same time. Now, multiple adults can give tests at the same time, but make sure that they're getting tested individually. Begin with the easiest part of the assessment and work your way up until the student can no longer respond. So with the placement test, you're going to go all the way through until they can't. And that's usually based on their phonics sections. And for the sight word sections, you can keep going forward if they don't pass those, because each lesson provides additional support for those. So you'll just you'll keep going and follow the prompt. And again, I'm going to go through these. I'll pull up an actual test that way you'll see what I'm talking about. Use the scripting. There's just like there's scripting in the curriculum, there's scripting on the test to tell you exactly what to do and how to document this test. And then you're going to make sure you stop when the student can no longer meet the accuracy benchmark. And again, that's scripted into the test. And then allow the students about 10 to 20 minutes to complete that. Each section has a guideline or a time frame for when a student is able to pass through, but kind of give them about 10 to 20 minutes to get through. It shouldn't take longer than that. So let's look at a mastery test, or excuse me, a placement test. Everybody see the placement test? Okay, great. So let's make this bigger so you guys can see. All right, so first off, I want to point out that there are 2 types of forms in each test. So both the placement test and the mastery test have 2 types of forms. The first form is the evaluator's form. The evaluator's form, that is going to be the part that the teacher sees. The student should not be seeing that section at all. And it should be hidden from them when you're doing the tests. So like in a folder, on a clipboard, they shouldn't be able to see that you're marking off things. The second form, if you scroll down to the end of the test, will be the student copy. The student copy is just exactly what they need to see. You're also able to create flashcards for this. or you can write them on a whiteboard if that's easier. I noticed for myself, working with some of the students, that too much on the page kind of freaks them out and gives them testing stress or testing anxiety. So definitely, if you need to, write them on a whiteboard and it might be easier. But those are the two forms that you'll see for the test. Looking at the top, obviously, if you don't fill out your paper, you put your name, your date on it, then it doesn't count. So make sure that the student's name is on there. Make sure the teacher who's evaluating them is on there, and their grade and the date. So looking at the placement test, as I said, you'll get placed into a benchmark area or a starting point or an entry point. These are the entry points that are provided for the curriculum. Challenge doesn't have an entry point like everyone else except for the first lesson. And there's a reason for that. I'll go into that once we hit through challenge. But keep in mind that there's also the section for sight word intervention. This is what I was saying earlier. Like, you may continue through a section as long as they pass the phonics. And that's because the sight words are always provided throughout the curriculum. But if they're failing those during the placement test, that just means they need sight word intervention, and there's a curriculum section in the manual to help give them support for that. So you can continue to move forward with those. When you're documenting these, for any correct response, there's going to be a check mark. If they don't give you a response, or they say, I don't know, it's going to be NR for no response. And then if they give you an incorrect answer, so like, for example, if they say N instead of M, you're going to write N in that spot. So if they give you an answer, write it in the box if it's wrong. If it's correct, give it a check. If they don't give you an answer, or there's no or they say, I don't know, you'll put NR. So talking about the script, all of your information about what you're supposed to say to the student is always listed and scripted, just like in the lessons. It also tells you where to start and which grade to start at. So this first section is the letter name section that I was mentioning before, that will determine whether a student can make it into the curriculum. Generally, students who are second and third do not need to do the section at all. If for some reason you find that the student is really, really struggling with letter sounds and letter recognition going through it, and they're just not making it, you might need to check them for their letters. But also, we survey parents and teachers prior to. So a lot of them, especially the K through first graders, they'll let you know on the survey whether those students know their letters or not. And then again, same thing for those older kids. If they don't know their letters, that survey will usually say it. So then you can check them on their letters if you need to. The next part of the test you'll want to pay attention to is this. This is where you're documenting how many they got correct and whether they passed or not. You're generally going to circle or mark these things. So if they didn't pass, you're circling not passed, and then you're writing the number that they got correct in the section. But there's always a criteria mark there that lets you know how to document what and where to go next. Next part, look here, that's going to be your next step after each section. The first part is telling you whether you're going into the curriculum or continuing with the test, or whether they cannot get through it or not. And again, this is the letter names information or the precept information. This is in your manual, but this is like really the bare bones information about it. But again, each of you will get the actual curriculum pack at your site. That way you'll be able to use that as part of your curriculum. But in addition to that, it comes with a manual for it. And also within the portal, the manual for that is there as well. The actual manual for letters and names is not in your manual. Just the bare bones breakdown for it is. But it's going to be in that beginning manual. So again, you're going to make sure you're checking each section. It'll give you criteria. It'll give you level. It'll give you script, what section. This is what I was talking about earlier about phonics sections and sight word sections. If they pass the phonics sections, you can move forward. But also keep an eye on how many sections they are not passing with sight words, because as you go and enter the information, you're going to write which sections they failed. So they failed section B of phonics. They failed section A and B of sight words. Does that make sense? Right. And then again, keep an eye on the next steps, because sometimes they tell you what to do based on grade. So like for this section, it'll tell you that if they do not pass the phonics section, if they're K through first grade, put them in the beginning 11. If they're second through third grade, then put them in extension review. But pay attention to that as you test them and as you work with them, because if you find that that information is too hard for them still, you can drop them back to beginning 11. And it does say that in the next steps. So keep that in mind. If you once you place a student, if you need to move them, you can. But once we hit ounce information and documentation on that line, I'll tell you how to put that information into the computer properly. But that's the gist of a placement test. Again, you go until you can't go anymore. Once you get to the sections that are closer to challenge, then they're looking at how they're able to read certain words. Generally, and this is a tip that you can definitely write down in store, if you test a student and they don't place, or excuse me, they test out completely, you always want to make sure you go and mastery test them next in challenge. So if they go to the end and it says if the student passes this section, she or he may not need challenge level, always mastery test them, because sometimes they can read the words, but it's some of those skills that they're lacking. So do that mastery test. If they then test through that mastery test and they're completely tested out of SIPPS and they don't need it, that might be your comprehension and vocab kids. So keep that in mind. And then if they pace and challenge, and we'll go more in depth in that in the challenge training, those first few levels are super repetitive. And they go really hard on short and long vowels. So it'll seem kind of boring for the kids early on, even those older ones. But it's to get them used to the routines, because challenges routines change pretty drastically based on beginning and extension. And they usually will slow walk them into that curriculum.
Hey,
So,
Ryan,
yep.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. So if we do this testing and they test out of the challenge level, and then we mastery test them and they test out of that, and they're obviously in there for comprehension, do you want us to still do SIPPS with them?
You don't have to do SIPPS with them.
Okay.
But it'll show on your documentation, because you are tracking all of this physically.
Mhm.
And then it'll also show an ounce whether they test it out. There's that option is an ounce when you enter in your data. So if
Okay.
I'm looking at data and that student doesn't have anything on their paperwork saying that they tested out, I won't know. But if they do, then I'm not there's no question for me. This student tested out. The only question I'm going to have now is, what are you doing with them next? And so
Okay.
that'll be in your tracking sheets, in your curriculum tracking, all of that, your student progress tracking. I'll be able to see that.
Okay.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay, great. So that's the gist of a placement test. We'll look at a mastery test after the next section. That way you guys will see that as well. Okay. Okay, so for our mastery tests, similar concept. You still get the script, you still get those sections of criteria, and you still have the phonics versus sight words passing. But the purpose of this is to confirm the skill mastery before advancing to the next level. You should not be going to the next level without mastery testing them. And it's very important. You don't want to push a kid into a different section before they're ready. So it takes about 5 to 10 lessons before you get to a mastery, give or take the level. When you're administering them, you're going to use that scripted material just like you did for placement. There is a teacher's guide for how to implement that and the placement test, both in your manual and digitally. Keep an eye on that teacher's form versus student form. Make sure that the students aren't seeing the teacher form. You're going to score immediately and then reteach if not mastered. So don't go into the next lesson if they don't master it. You can reteach all of the lessons, or you can find out what they're missing and reteach that and then give them the mastery test. So you don't, if they don't pass, you don't necessarily have to go back to, say, beginning 1 if that's where they're starting. Find out exactly what they missed, which is why you're documenting those tests consistently and accurately. That way you can go back and say, okay, I have this student who, I don't know, didn't pass just the short E sound. And this student also didn't pass the short E sound. So when I do my review, we're going to review the short E sound and then go back and then take this test and then see. Now, we'll say that in your documentation and even before the mastery test in your manual, there's a section that kind of preps you for it. And it tells you that you should be reviewing these chapters before you go into the mastery test. So once you finish that last lesson, review the content. Just like you would do any other test with this, and just like they do in school. They go over their materials, then they review the materials, and then they test them in the materials. So make sure you're reviewing prior to the mastery test. Don't just jump right into a mastery test. I normally will take the content and do a quick game with them, or do a quick run of a modified lesson. That way they're getting a quick review on it, and then I'll get the mastery test. For challenge, I'll review those main concepts about the generalizations. And again, you'll learn more about that if you don't know once we hit the SIPPS lessons. But make sure you're reviewing. And then again, remember how you're documenting. Doing that consistently and accurately is going to be important. One, all of this information gets looked at via audit by both us and a third party that audits us. They do pull documents all the way up to 5 years. So make sure that you're tracking this properly and accurately. That way it's consistent across the board. So if somebody else were to pick up your test and another pick up a test you gave, and then maybe a test that your mentor gave, how it was documented is the same, and it should be that way across the board. So keep in mind, you don't want to have everyone doing mastery tests and placement tests, like all of your staff, all of your mentors. Get a couple people, train them. That way, when you do your mastery test days or you do your placement test days, a couple of you can be working on the mastery test, and the other group can be working on a game or a whole group activity or doing centers with them. So don't, if you have to, because some supervisors only allow the coordinator to do it. And then also, like, the coordinator at the end of the day is responsible. So if you want to take on the brunt on your own, you're absolutely able to do that. But I do suggest either training at least one staff member or a long-term volunteer, someone you've had for years, in doing it. That way you'll have an extra person, because it does take a while to get each student, especially if you're looking at a 25 to 40 to 60 students throughout the year. So keep that in mind. Let's look at actually, before we do that, using the data for placement tests, you're going to group the students by instructional need. For mastery tests, this is going to tell you if your students are ready to progress or if they need more practice. And then you're going to use the data for flexible grouping, targeted intervention, and then tier movement in MTSS and RTI, which you'll get more information about those as we go through the curriculum levels. But let me show you a mastery test before we move forward. We won't spend too much time on that because it literally looks the same as the other test. I opened it. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Okay, so so looking at, this is a beginning mastery test. It again has the same scripts at the beginning that explain exactly how to give this test. It's got your criteria and your markers. So when you're supposed to be given this test, this one, mastery test 1, follows lesson 10. It'll tell you on the test, in your manual, on the mastery test schedule, it'll show you all of those and exactly when you're supposed to give these tests. You are able to do like masteries at, especially around holiday time. So like if you haven't mastered in a while and you guys are about to go on a long vacation, you can mastery before or you can mastery after. I would suggest doing it before. That way, like that 2 weeks, sometimes information just jumps out of a kid's head. It just happens. It's the craziest thing. But if you're gonna do a mastery test, you're gonna make sure you go and check, one, where their last lesson was, document that. So even if, say, they're in extension 13 and it's not time for a mastery test yet, but you guys are about to go on vacation, so you're testing everybody, make sure you're checking where they're supposed to be before you give that test, and make sure you're not retesting them in a spot they shouldn't be tested in. So if they're supposed to be in, say, this lesson, it'll always follow lesson 10. If they're in lesson 8 because you're doing a mastery test, that's absolutely okay. But just keep in mind, you're testing them early, there's a good chance that might be something that they don't know. But you'll know that based on your kids. So same scripting, same criteria of completing the phonics sections versus the sight word. So if they pass the phonics section, you can go forward. If they don't pass the sight word section, they'll need sight word intervention. So take those sight words that they don't know, add them to the review deck, send them home with them on vacation to practice with a bingo game or something like that. Like, give them opportunities to practice those things and review them. And then there isn't a spot on here that says like next steps, like on the placement test, but you'll know, but you're checking for mastery. So you know that if they're not passing that mastery section, then they're not moving forward. You should not be moving a student forward into the next lesson if they have not passed their mastery tests. So pay attention to your schedule, pay attention to your tracking. And then again, the 2 separate forms that student copy, is here. Again, you can use these, you can create flashcards, you can use a whiteboard, whatever's easier for you. Super easy. All right, the schedule, that's the next thing I want to show you guys, the mastery schedule. So we have this online in the coordinator portal that has each lesson level already broken down for you. How many lessons before, how many lessons needed, what mastery is behind it. Pay close attention to that for extension. The reason why I say that is because extension starts with review lessons. And so it's easy to mix up review 1 through 5 with 1 through 5. So pay close attention to that. If you put it wrong into your data, it will mess up your whole system. And it will also cause your data to be off, and things will have to be removed by ounce. That's a whole nother story. We'll talk about all of that with ounce later, but make sure you're paying attention to when they're supposed to get those masteries and what level they're supposed to be testing at. All right. If you give a student a test that they're not supposed to have, it does not count towards their score. Generally, a student who's been in the program about 3 to 4 months should have at least 2. Our students are usually in the program way longer than 3 to 4 months. So your students should have more than 2 mastery tests by the end of the school year.
So the mastery test schedule that you're just showing on the screen right now, nothing's changed since last year, right? So
Nope.
if I still use those sheets I made up,
It
that
should be
show-
fine, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I
Yes.
haven't seen any changes of the numbers based on like the new additions and stuff like that. So it should be
Okay.
the same schedule. The only thing, not the only thing, this is another thing I would point out. If your student is starting in beginning, and I think I'm going to update this a little bit so it looks a little better, and I'm going to add this note in there as well. If your student starts in beginning and goes through the whole lesson and finishes it, when they get to extension, they do not need the review section. You can skip that. So keep that in mind. I'll put that note somewhere in here when I update this, but you do not need the review section or mastery tests 1 through 3 of extension if they started in beginning. Any questions about mastery tests or placement tests? All right, great. Okay, friends. Last note on this, track. Document.
Can you hear me?
Did you need
Can you
something,
hear-
Yolanda?
This is Tiana.
Oh, Tiana, go ahead.
I have a question
Sure.
because I'm originally coming from daycare and I had to do like where we had to do assessment tests and the kids, they didn't really like know the stuff, but I found out at the end when it was time to test them again, they memorized it. So what happened to kids that are like that memorize it, but they really don't know it?
Well, the good thing is that some of the information is supposed to be memorized. So for example, sight words, if that's
Mhm.
all memorization. They just have to memorize the spelling and what the word looks like. And so when they see it, they'll know what it is. So some of the stuff is memorization.
Okay.
Some of it, you can test them outside of the actual test. So if they blow through it and you're like, they passed the mastery test, but they're still struggling in using them. That'll let you
Mhm.
know that they don't actually know the materials. So they'll
Okay.
pass the mastery test, but when you go to do the lessons, they can't get through the lessons.
Right. See, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
'cause
so
I
that's
have
kind of
seen
like
it
a
and I'm
false
like,
pass.
like we did this, like how you memorize it, but when I showed you something totally different, you didn't remember that was the again or they, something like that.
You'll often see that during lessons and you'll be able to pick that up. What I suggest for testing when you're doing the mastery tests, because you're able to write these words down, you can change the order. Just pay attention to when you're marking your test, which one you're giving them.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Okay, so fidelity and best practices. Teach SIPPS daily without skipping components. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Let's be honest. Sometimes you walk in for the day to do your plans and things are just not working out that day. You're able to move that around and be flexible, but keep in mind the students still need to have their SIPPS. I would say at least twice a week if you're seeing them twice a week. 2 lessons a week. But again, sometimes you have to move your schedule around and be flexible. It's part of the job. Sometimes you walk in your room's full of dentist equipment and they're doing dentistry that day and you have to move your whole plan and you can't get to your curriculum. So Keep in mind that you need to be flexible, but teach it daily if possible. Do your best not to skip components. There have been times where I've had to do 2 lessons in one day. So what I'll do is I'll combine lessons, but I don't skip any components. They still get all of the sight words. They still get all of the key points of each lesson. So even if you have to blend a lesson, make sure you're not skipping those components that they need, including that fluency practice at the end. Make sure you're not skipping that. And if for some reason you're giving a lesson and you have to stop early, finish that lesson the next day. Do a reteach. On SIPPS, they have an A section and a B section, sometimes a C section if you're looking at a challenge, but I'll explain those for each level. But usually there's a reteach section for each of those. If you need to reteach that lesson because you did not complete it, do that reteach part. But don't skip. Build a classroom culture where errors equal learning. Mistakes will be made. All of these students are behind in some type of way, whether it's with phonics, vocab, comprehension. Everybody's there for the same reason, to better their learning skills. Give them that opportunity to make the mistakes, provide that support. Follow those scripted routines. Keep that manual on deck. You will need it. I promise you will need it. Even those of you who've been doing it for years, I've done it for years. I still look at my manual because there's always something you can miss that is super important for that student. It's going to support you. It's going to support the student. It's going to support your mentors. So make sure people have what they need as far as those scripts and those routines. Maintain a pace, about 1 lesson per day. Again, if for some reason you need to do 2, have a buffer activity in the middle. So like if you're doing lesson 5, review the sight words or play a game or review it in a different way. And then you can go to lesson 6, if that makes sense. If you're doing 2 in the same day. And then limit your number of proctors. This is what I was saying earlier. Anybody giving the test, limit how many people are giving those tests. It'll keep the consistency with the testing, and it'll be easier for the coordinator to track those mistakes. Or any inconsistency in the documentation of those tests. And this was on the last screen, but I'm going to say it again. Document, document, document. Consistency with the documentation as well. So train your staff, train your mentors on how to document information, whether that's to document a mastery test or to give you information on that particular group for the day. Teach them how to do that in the quickest way and the most efficient way, because they don't always have time to sit there for 10 minutes to write out a whole play-by-play of the day for you. So teach them how to take notes really quickly on the information that you need, or provide them with a template. Support and resources. So you're going to get your teacher's guides. Those are digitally and printed. So you'll be able to find those in your manual and both on the coordinator drive. The SIPPS online portal, that's the learning portal. If you don't have access to the learning portal, let me know. I'll be updating those sometime in the next couple of weeks. So shoot me an email saying that you need access to the portal, and I can get you access to that. And also, if you are a supervisor on the call, and you've had staff that left, just give me a list of those so I can make sure I remove those licenses off so they're not being used. And then there's professional learning opportunities through us and through the learning portal and through SIPPS themselves, collaborative classroom themselves. They often send out emails about webinars and trainings. They do a big summer training every year. And I believe it's in Orlando. But there's tons of opportunities for you to get training. If you need help, please ask. We can get it to you. If you're struggling with a specific section, ask. We can give it to you. But keep in mind that we also will still be doing on-site audits for some of you guys too. So we'll be coming to see physically how you guys are doing these trainings. We will be using the SIPPS provided observation tools, which you also can use. There are self-checks. There are observation tools that you can use for your mentors and your staff. There are there's basically different types of resources that you can use to make sure that you're on track and that your staff's on track. And then literacy coach and reading specialist, those are your school resources. So talk to your teachers at your school, talk to your literacy coaches and your reading specialists, get information about your students that you will need to help them succeed. I mentioned earlier, IEPs, 504s, get information about these students that you can use to help them succeed. And then another tip I'll give about SIPPS instruction, it can be very boring and very robotic and repetitive. Keep your mood high and super excited about it. I'm not ashamed to tell a kid, I get it, I know it's boring, but this is gonna take 15-20 minutes. If you guys are paying attention and we're all doing this together and we're all working together, and we'll be done with it really quickly. And then we can play a game next. Or then we can get tablet time next, or give points, give treats, things to keep them excited about getting through the lesson, because it can be boring. And they've been in school for 8 hours. So to come to us and sit down and do something similar again, sometimes they can get a little rambunctious. But keep in mind, you still got to get through the lesson. We're not skipping anything. So if someone needs to leave to go to the bathroom, or like if they need to leave temporarily, make sure you're stopping that lesson. So when they come back, you can pick it back up. Now, if they leave for the day, go ahead and finish that lesson, do a reteach the next day. Any questions about that? Okay, great. Okay, a couple questions for you guys. First, for those of you who have done SIPPS before or have not, what challenges do you anticipate? Feel free to come off of mute or raise your hand. I can see everybody now. So if you need to come off of mute, you can. But what challenges do you anticipate? Feel free to also type it in the chat if you don't want to come off of mute. Anything you're worried about going into SIPPS. I know throughout the years, challenge has been a huge issue for some people because the challenge is challenging. You'll run into some things that feel weird to teach, especially since all of us are adults and we've learned in different ways. We've been on this earth for many different years. So it might look different for you to teach in this way, especially if you didn't learn it that way, and it might feel weird. Also, don't be ashamed if you run into something you're like, what is that? What does that mean? A lot of the stuff is broken down in the curriculum, but you can ask or you can do a quick Google search. We will be doing another literacy one-on-one training where it goes over terms and science of reading and stuff like that. You'll get that opportunity again this year. So feel free to invite staff, mentors, whoever. You can also sit in to get the refresher. I do recommend it. But we'll be doing that again next year. That way you'll be able to get some of that basic foundation information for people who are not literacy peeps. They haven't been doing this their whole lives. You're coming from a different background or whatnot. So you'll be able to get that background information in that training. But any challenges?
Hey, Ryan, my challenge that I pretty much bump into every year is when you've got so many different groups and not enough volunteers. So just doing more than one group in a day, doing 2 SIPPS lessons, different levels and stuff like that, and just rotating them around in centers and stuff. But after a while, they do kind of merge together into more, I don't know, properly level groups. You have some that are really, really low, like an extension. Let's say the 2nd to 3rd and 4th grade group that I do. I'll have some that are review. I'll have some that are, regular extension, and then I'll have a handful that are challenge. So it's like, okay, I've got 3 different levels and I've got, 15, how many kids? So you can't have a big group of 7, like you said, it just doesn't work. So you have to break them up into smaller groups. That's the only thing. And usually our volunteers aren't all back tail end of until maybe October
Mhm.
or November. That's when they usually come back now.
So yeah, absolutely. For those of you who are new on the call, figuring out your group setup, you can do it early on, but it's going to change. As they mastery test, as they learn, as they grow, you're going to have to strategize on how to build your groups, especially based on the number of people that you have on site. And that's why I was saying earlier, the number of people is super important. It'll make your job easier or it'll make it harder based on how many people you have. So an example based on what Amy was saying, you may have a student who is and you might have 10 students that are in beginning, I don't know, beginning 1, and then you'll have 5 students that are in beginning 21. So they're really far apart, but you don't want to have a group of 10. You don't even want to have a group of 5. So you might have to decide based on how many people you have, how to split those groups up. And also pay attention to the student. It's not just the skills that you have to look at when you're determining groups, behavior and whether they mesh or not. Sometimes it makes your job easier to maybe put Greg in this group and Johnny in the other group because they just don't mesh very well. That is something you have to worry about sometimes. Work on that community building on that larger scale, maybe outside of the SIPPS lesson, only because if they're fighting the whole time, you have 30 minutes, 20 minutes to finish that lesson. If you're taking that whole time to deal with behavior, you're not going to get through the lesson, which unfortunately makes the other kids suffer, and sometimes multiple groups suffer. So pay attention to how you move those kids around. Talk with your staff, the people who sit with them on a daily basis, because you may not be next to each group, but you do want to make sure there's a staff member in at least in each room that you're in, to support the mentors, because they shouldn't be alone with students anyway. But make sure you're setting those groups up and placing them properly in the room to make sure that they're functioning cohesively and efficiently. But there may be the situation where you're running into a group that, say you have a group that placed in beginning 11, and then you have a group that maybe it's like one kid in beginning 11 and one kid in beginning 21, but everybody else, they're grouped up. You don't have enough people to have those 2 separate groups. One thing you could do is have one mentor teach more than one group. That is an opportunity. You'll just rotate them out to someone else to do a supplemental activity. That's one option. Another option would be to blend the groups. And you always want to blend down, blend to the lowest level. You don't want to blend up, because that student who is in the beginning 11 lesson, it will be too hard for them to move up to 21. However, that lesson 21 may be easy to move down to beginning 11. Those lessons might be easy for them. However, it's better for them to get review than to be in this place of frustration. So you may need to blend groups. The only thing I suggest that you do for that is to make sure you document it. You have to pay close attention to documenting, and especially when you're putting information into our database, OUNCE, because moving those groups, you have to be careful not to test them where they shouldn't be tests. So if that student is in beginning 21 and you move them down to beginning 11, you need to document somewhere, I've moved this kid to beginning 11. I do not need to test them for mastery until after we get to 21. Does that make sense? So if a student placed in 21, then their next mastery test, I think for beginning, will be mastery 3, I think. Beginning 11, 1 to 11 is 1, 11 to 21 or to 20 is 2, and then 21 to 30 is 3. So they would test at mastery 3. So when that group, because they're in beginning 11, hits mastery test 1, that kid that is in 21 does not take that test. just have them do another activity or have them review the information, but do not test them in that mastery because they don't need it. They've already passed it with their placement test. They've tested out of it. And you can document that on your paperwork ahead of time. That way, you know, even on your test paperwork, you can document that, test it out. Placed in beginning 21.
So if I have, like you mentioned, 2 kids, one at beginner 11, one at beginner 21, whatever the groups have to be combined, go down to beginner 11. When I put in the data for that beginning 21 student, I'm putting in that he placed at B21,
Yes.
correct? Okay, all right.
You're still putting that they placed at B21. But document in the notes that you are teaching them at beginning 11, but you won't test them until mastery 3 because you had to move them down for whatever reason, low staff,
Right.
not enough people, whatever.
And these are the notes that are in outs.
Notes that are in
Okay.
outs, but also document them on your mastery test.
Obviously,
and
yeah,
your
okay.
tracking information.
Gotcha.
Document it in as many places as possible. That way, when they're checking for accuracy, consistency, and fidelity in your paperwork,
Okay,
you have documented everything to cover your own butt.
okay. Gotcha,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions about those challenges or figuring out what groups to set up? And we can go into more detail about that if anybody needs it. If anybody wants to get on a call about any of that, we can, or has questions that pop up throughout the year. You can ask me, you can ask a vet coordinator, you can ask your supervisor if they know the answer. Just ask the question if you have it. Any questions about those scenarios? Okay, cool. So what support do you need? So think about the training we just went through. Think about what I said will come down the pipeline as far as this curriculum and instruction. What support do you need aside from the trainings on SIPPS? Because we're doing those in the next couple of days. What support do you think you would need? Feel free to type in the chat or come off of mute. Or if you don't need anything, we can move on to the next question.
Brian,
Yep.
last year when I did this, it would have been helpful. I mean, I made up one of my own, but maybe seeing some examples of how people are tracking, different examples on the shared drive.
Yes.
Good.
I think I might have some sample tracking sheets already available. These are all in the coordinator drive because these get turned in with the monthly information. So there should be tons of tracking sheets there. But also I have templates that'll also be popping up into the coordinator drive too. That'll be super helpful. I had a digital tracker that I was using on Google Drive. There are versions you can print. That mastery schedule is also available on the coordinator drive as well, Michael. So if anybody needs that, all of that is there. You can also create your own format. Marlene has a really good format that she uses that she puts right in their student binder. So she knows what lessons they gave. She knows what mastery tests are up for next. And she has the dates and everything for that. First Coast also has a really good form that they use for that as well. So make it easier for you. There are so many different templates in the worlds of teaching that you can use or duplicate or replicate or modify for your own use. But let me get into this coordinator drive and I can pull up where some of this stuff is. All right, so this is the coordinator drive for this year, and we'll probably, there's another training that'll go through some of these resources as well. We've got the previous year's documents, all the training and stuff is in here as well. I think this, hold on, this one might be the wrong one. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, here we go. The previous years are here, the grant documents are in here, and then also you have samples and templates, marketing materials, that's flyers, pictures, and anything that we collect. And then the different meeting and trainings are being here. Our trainings that we do throughout the year will pop up in here as well. But as far as those templates, there should be lesson tracking. Are they in it? Yep, there's some in here already. So there are Google documents that people use. This one is a good one for tracking assessments and which ones students have completed and which day they've completed them. That one's good for that. This one is one that was created in St. Pete a while back. Daily, the SIPPS lessons, what mentor, whether they mastered it, any documents, or excuse me, any comments or notes, what small group activity, what mentor did it, what notes. So there are different versions that you can use. This is the printable one, excuse me, that was created a while back. This one includes the SIPPS lessons and information, whatever skill wasn't mastered, what whole group or review activity they did, behavior. That's what this is. They had a good day, they had an okay day. They had some issues, they had a bad day. And then notes would go in here, or any additional observations. Also at the bottom, this took the there's like a progress tracker type thing in SIPPS, in the SIPPS curriculum as well. You can find the printables in your appendix, and you can also find them on the portal. I created this years ago. I took that information from those lessons that they were in and added that to the bottom of my tracking sheet. That way I could track if the student was mastering these things per student. And then also it would help me go back and review whether a student needed to move up or down that I wasn't with. So if a mentor had this, I could go and pull this document and look and see that in that group they struggled with these or they didn't, and then it made it easier for the student to go up or down. I can make those decisions a little bit easier because I had that documentation. SIPPS lesson tracker. But as you can see, there's no hard way you should be doing this. There are many different ways. There are tons of like teacher pay teacher, Pinterest versions of trackers that you can use and update to fit your own needs. Which one is this one? I think this one is just checking off which lesson they did per day. So there's many ways for you to do that. Tons of templates. Also lesson plan examples are in here as well. So setting up your lesson plan and how you want to do that, there's different ways to do that as well. Tons of support. Any questions on any more questions on, oops.
I have a question.
So fast. Hold on, sorry, click too much. Okay, go ahead.
So for the end of the school year surveys with like the teacher and parent surveys, is there a way to make that easier? Because it was just kind of difficult with trying to get the teacher surveys and the parent surveys, and some students weren't coming towards the end.
So easier, yes and no. And I say that because sometimes it doesn't matter how you send it to them, they won't turn it in.
Yeah.
But I used to, during that time, like I would start it 2 weeks before they were due. I would be out there at dismissal. So I would leave my staff and my volunteers to clean up and pack up everybody. I would go out early while they shut down the kids and got them packed up, and I would sign this for me. Or I would sit it out before the day ended. That way when the students, the parents arrived, that clipboard is already there. They're already signing those for me. So like, you're gonna be here for a minute. These all have to get signed. Here, sign it. So as I'm checking them out, they're filling those out. Some of them are 4 questions. Some of them are like 7 to 8 questions, depending on the grade or what time of the year you're doing it. That's one way to make it easier for you to make sure you're getting all of them. If they're not showing up, call them. I will call a parent in a heartbeat. Fill this out really quick. Send them a text message. Hey, I need you to fill this out really quick. Screenshot or just put it. You can scribe their answers. Just write on the paperwork, scribed by this person on this date. Same thing with text messages. You can print that out and attach that to the form and then mark it off. I'm okay with that. As long as it's documented somewhere and you got it from them, absolutely fine. Same thing for teacher. I will show up at a classroom in a hot minute. Excuse me. You guys on break right now? Can you fill this out for me really quick, please? And then I also color code them. So like with teachers, sometimes they get stacks of paper this big in their mailbox. So just sticking it in their mailbox might be an issue, especially if they're white sheets of paper. So I will normally send it on a different color sheet of paper first. And as I have to keep sending it to them, that paper will get aggressively more colorful so they can see it. So like it'll go from yellow to green or green to yellow to red. I'm like, final notice. And then I'll email it to them. You can also create a Google form. I think we have a few from last year, so we can make some for this year too. Google forms are super easy to fill out. And then you could just print the Google form, stick it in their file, make sure it's marked that it's the survey for whatever time of the year or whatever, and the date's on there. So many different ways for you to give it to them. Excuse me. Easier might not be the word. Also, if they're turning them in, another thing I would do is I would give them a treat once they turn them in, they're finished. A little thank you. Thank you so much for getting this in. I used to do a newsletter and give the teacher in the schools an update of everything. Shout out to such and such for getting all of their student surveys in first. There'll be a chocolate bar in your mailbox. Or to also make it easier, if they have more than one student, I'll staple all of them together, put a cover letter on it, give with the due date, the thank you, the why we need this. This is part of our grant. It's a grant requirement. If we don't have this, your student data does not count. Like I really lay it on thick for them, and I make it as easy as possible for them to do it by giving them everything they need all together and labeled. Here, I need this back. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. There are a billion different ways to get it done. Any other questions about support? Anything else anybody needs as far as like SIPPS or documentation period? Again, we'll have more training on specific levels of SIPPS as the days come. We'll also go through all of those resources, digital, ounce, RES, YReads, all of that stuff. There's going to be a training for all of that. No. So let's discuss logistics really quick. So for scheduling, materials, and grouping, any concerns about scheduling SIPPS or getting it done through the day? Anybody want to give any tips about scheduling and getting it done through the day and time frames? Because keep in mind, everybody's time frame's a little different. It could run from an hour, 30 minutes to 2 hours to 2.5 hours. Like that varies per school site. So does anybody have any questions about how to get your schedule set up to make sure you're including your full SIPPS lesson? Or anybody have any tips?
I'm just wondering how my program's going to look because of the fact that I don't have any staff. It's just me now. So it's, I guess, once I'm in there and I get a feel for it and get a feel for the kids, have some sort of idea. But right now I'm just, and without, volunteers coming back until October, November, it's going to be me. So I don't know. I'm kind of scared because like I said, it's just going to be me and the kids. So, and then if you've got, several different groups of kids at different learning levels, it's like, how am I going to do this?
Well, one thing I will suggest first off, because being by yourself should never be a thing, talk to your supervisor as soon as possible, because you should at least have one volunteer there. Staff, even us, we really shouldn't be, per Y policy, by yourself with kids. And we're after school, so we don't have the support of like a teacher to call someone to come and help. If their emergency happens, if someone has to go to a restroom and there's no other staff or no restroom in your building, like you literally have to take your whole group with you. So that stops lessons, that stops your day for 30 minutes sometimes, because you've got 15 kids that all need to go to the bathroom now. So definitely talk to your supervisor, see what help that they can provide with either having an assistant from another side bump over, or or a staff member from another site, or helping you with recruiting, giving you access to some resources, because there's like volunteer match, there's and you're really good at finding volunteers anyway, but is there
Right.
someone who could possibly provide help in the manner? Even interns.
I've got some high school girls that are lined up as well. So, but you know, with high schoolers too, that it's like, oh, I
Little
can
more
come, oh,
guidance.
I can't be here. Oh, you know, my mom has me to do this, or oh, I have. So that's gonna, you know, I'm gonna take their help 100%. But yeah, my regular group of people that I had, they're all coming back from last year, but it's the
October.
snowbird effect that, you know, you gotta wait. When you coming? Oh, October, November. I'm like, oh, so
Right. But also keep in mind that first month anyway, you're doing
it's gonna be
testing,
a lot of testing. Yeah.
you're doing expectations, going over rules, getting them used to your routines. So you don't have to start SIPPS day one, week one. I'm not expecting you to start SIPPS day one, week one. I'm expecting you to get your testing done that first month. Some people don't, you're not even starting the first week of September anyway, because Labor Day and all of that stuff. Most people are going to be starting after the holiday.
Correct.
So plan that into your schedule. If you know you're by yourself, obviously be completely transparent like you're doing now with us. Like, we're waiting on staff. We ask these questions already ahead of time in the deliverables and paperwork, and we check in with you anyway, just to see where you're at. So we already know that you're short staffed. So we're not super hounding you, because we know that you've already been doing the work for it. You're just not getting these volunteers. But at the same time, I'm still looking at your why to provide some type of help, because although the budget has dropped this year, the quality and expectations of the program and the safety features of the program do not change. Safety is still important, and you being by yourself, if an emergency happens, that definitely puts you and the program at jeopardy, not only other people's safety at jeopardy, which is the most important thing. At first and foremost, we're safe at the program. And if you're with 15, 20 kids by yourself, then that's a safety risk.
Right.
So if you need help with those conversations, let me know. I don't mind being a part of them. We definitely made sure to stress that during our conversations prior to grant funding and during our kickoff training. Anytime we do a quarterly or conversation with them, it's in their paperwork that they sign, their MOUs and stuff like that. Your why is supposed to help fill that in. So based on this new staff model, how are you going to support this requirement of the program, which is one, you need mentors, and then two, you have to maintain a ratio that's a safe ratio for both physical safety and for learning safety. So yeah, keep me posted. That goes for all of you. Like, let us know. We're here to help support in the best way that we can. I don't live close enough to most of you to come and volunteer, so that might not be an option. But if
We'll put you on a screen, don't worry about it.
I can do what do they call remote learning? It won't be fun for me, but I can do it. I did it during COVID. It's super stressful, but they have all these new resources now, so all these new digital resources. So it actually might be pretty fun, and I do it all the time with you guys anyway. So. But yeah, volunteers, staff, that's gonna constantly be an issue. You will have to move your groups around, change, and be flexible. Keep in mind, we're not stressing completely about the first month. We're just expecting that there's information out about the program, you're getting your enrollment completing and your data into the system, and you're getting those initial tests done. So you do have some wiggle room in that first month. So keep that in mind. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions about support? You're very welcome. What about materials? Does anybody need help with materials, or is anybody short on anything? Does anybody need to know where to find things? Again, I did ship out items. For some, Doreen, your stuff is in my office. I'll be driving that down to you sometime, and either this week or next week. Tampa, I'll actually probably be dropping that off to your main office today, because I'll be in Tampa. And the rest of you, your Y should have ordered it already, or I already shipped it out. I think I shipped out yesterday, First Coast.
Oh, so Ryan, you shipped ours out?
Yeah, so the items that we purchased for you over the summer, because we sent that curriculum resource survey out last year to see what everybody needed. And with the amount of money that we had left, we tried to get everybody something. So you might get sets of stuff, you might get pieces of a curriculum, but everybody at least got the pre-SIPPS curriculum. So everybody's gonna get that. Also, the new handbook should be in those boxes.
Is it coming to our local Y?
It should be at your main Y address. Yours is addressed to you, so,
Okay,
but it'll have the stuff for everybody in it.
okay, thank you.
And I think Maria, I think you guys your Y ordered yours directly at the end of the school year or the grant year last year. So you guys should have yours pretty soon if you haven't received it already. And I think who's the other group? I think it was Southwest Florida was the other group, and everybody else theirs is getting shipped or dropped off. So everyone will at least have that handbook, the new handbook that's in there. I will say that some of these new grant changes for this year were not in that handbook because that handbook was printed before we found out all this crazy information. So there are some things in there that are not a lot, but some things that are in there that are outdated. But for the majority of it, it's got some good information in there that you'll need as a coordinator. Letter names, which is the pre-SIPPS curriculum. Yeah, all that'll be in that box. But some things were replaced, but we got what we were able to based on what you guys were asking for. So like some people were asking for Dreams on Wheels, or plus books for edition 3, I think, but they don't exist. They only have them for like 5th edition now. So I think they got rid of the 4th edition one as well. So some things we couldn't order because they no longer make them. They've transitioned completely out of them. So some people got new 4th edition curriculum. Again, most of this stuff is digital anyway. You can print even the sound cards and sight word cards. You can print those from the portal and on cardstock, and boom, now you have cards. So most of that stuff is available to you. The only thing you can't like fully print, I believe, is the manual itself, but there is a digital view of it online. So you have access to that from there. We talked about grouping already, scheduling materials. Any other thing you guys want to discuss about SIPPS and how to navigate? Again, we'll be walking through lessons in the next couple days, and levels.
All right, so on the mastery test, there was a field at the end, it was like number of lessons. Are we still using that field?
Number of lessons taught
Yeah.
on the mastery test or in ounce?
It was announced.
Yes. And when we go over the ounce information
Okay.
and how to input the data, because there was some changes that happened mid-year last year, and the same thing happened the year before because of all of the new database. Hopefully most of this stuff is ironed out and we won't have to, because technology is technology. Like,
I know.
it is what it is. But we'll try to get you the most accurate information right up front. If things change, we'll make sure it comes down the pipeline. But as far as I know, the things that we discussed and hammered in last year will most likely be on that same list. So we'll go through lessons taught, when to put that as a 0, when to not put that as a 0, especially when you're dealing with mastery tests. We'll go through all of that stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Any new people have any questions or concerns? Again, I'm the type of person, like, if once I get it, like, let me get into it first, and then I might have my questions, which again is absolutely fine. You can ask me questions later, or any of these lovely people questions later. We do have monthly meetings every first Friday. So you'll be able to sit and collaborate with these people. We like to provide time to do so at the end of each of those meetings. So if you end up having questions down the line, also that contact list should be coming out this week as well. So you'll be able to contact people directly if you have questions. But my information is always available. But your next steps will be to, once you get your kids schedule your placement tests. Some people do them before the kids start. Some people do it after they start. However you want to do that is fine with me, as long as you're documenting your time. That way, when we start putting attendance into ounce, you'll be able to mark when you have those kids. So anytime you spend with the kids, that's getting documented into ounce. Even if it's not their scheduled day, make sure you're documenting that time. So you get credit for your work. Oh, that's on there twice. What was supposed to be there? I don't know. Sorry. Schedule placement tests, begin lessons, insert whatever your start date is for that, because everybody has different start dates. And then plan on ongoing check-ins for support and coaching. That's going to be your one-on-ones. That's going to come along. There'll be a tab in the contact document that will have options for one-on-one schedule. You're just going to go and put your name on which day you want and which time. And I will get those scheduled out. And those will most likely start in September. I might schedule something with the later peeps on that and those blocks at the end of this month, just to make sure I touch base with you before you guys roll in. But we'll chat and bounce information around for those of you who need it. And then, oh, this is supposed to be form instructional groups. So schedule your placement tests, get that information, form your instructional groups. If you have questions about that stuff as you get into that, reach out. We're here. Prepare reviewer materials, get trained, train yourself, train your staff. We give tons of training, like I said before, but part of that training process for you will be the things that you do on your own, whether that's going in and looking at the materials, going onto the portal, jumping into a webinar, practicing with the materials. Even if you grab your son, your daughter, and practice with them, or your coworker and practice with them, practice the materials. It'll get easier as you do it. For the most part, some of it is a lot of words on paper, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. But you'll still need the paper, still look at that stuff, still practice, still train. Because like I said, even the vets, we need reminders on these things and in different portions of it. Because it is so much information, it's easy for things to slip through the cracks on the day-to-day. So make sure you're reviewing your information. That's it. Nobody has any questions or comments or needs anything. Here's my information and my phone number. You can call, text, email. The best form of contact will be email though, because generally I'm in a Zoom meeting or something during the day. So if I miss your call, I'll generally call you back. Or if I miss your text, I'll either text you that same day as soon as I see it, or if it's out of my work hours time frame, then I'll text you the next day to see if you still need something. But emergencies, I would say try to call me. Also shoot me an email. Because if I miss your call, that way I'll at least see it on the email, because those things pop up on my computer even in Zoom meetings. So I'll at least be able to see it and get back to you as soon as possible. What else? Oh, Katie, she's our VP. And also my supervisor. So you can see her into information, because if for some reason I'm out or I don't have an answer, or she can get to you first, that she knows a lot about YReads too, because she was in my spot before I was. So if you have questions, she might be able to answer those as well. Any questions regarding policies and MOUs? Speak directly to your supervisor first, but you can also ask me those questions as well. Curriculum questions, all me, mostly, or other coordinators, because they've also been doing this thing, some of them way longer than me. But utilize the people around you. This is a group of collaboration, and and teamwork. So you'll have those opportunities to reach out and talk to people, and in some cases visit other sites if you're able. So I'll let you guys go. I think we got a little bit of time back. I said it wouldn't take 2 hours. So yay. You're welcome. See you soon. Have a great week. And actually I'll see you guys on Thursday for the beginning training, I think. So if you're able to make it, invite volunteers if you would like to, any staff, if you have them, send them my way. Have a good day.
Ryan, can I hold back